Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل. Okay, so today we're going to talk about lesson number 5. Lesson 5, which is knowing God. Knowing God. Of course, when we talk about knowing God, it looks very easy and simple. You know, we say, who doesn't know God? Everybody knows God. So when we are asked, who is God? We say, God is the creator of man and the universe. There are times even we say, God has 99 names. And even according to some of our scholars, the names of God are more than thousands. Okay, like if you look at Joshin Kabir, we recite, it's about 1,000 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that particular book. So it looks like knowing God becomes easier. But in this lesson, we are going to look at it from different angle altogether. And it is going to be based on what we studied last week. Last week, you remember we did the summary of how we acquire knowledge as human beings, in which we spoke about intellectual understanding, experimental understanding, devotional understanding, and mystical understanding. We spoke about them last week. That is the intellectual, experimental, devotional, and mystical understanding. So what we are trying to do here in this particular lesson is that, is there other ways we can know God apart from looking at what God has done? Because remember, God is the one who created the heavens. He is the one who created the earth. He is the one who created the heavens, and then he created the earth. Okay. So that simply means that we know him through experimental understanding. I want you to pay attention to this. We see the creation that Allah has created, and because of that, we align Allah with what he has created. So we call it experimental understanding. We look at what he has done. We look at the sun. We look at the moon. And we see the greatness of the sun. We see the greatness of the moon. We look at this galaxy, the stars. Even you look at the human beings. You see the greatness of human beings. And because of that, by seeing, like as we mentioned, experimental is through either physics, chemistry, biology, through the 5 senses. So we see this great. And then we said, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is great. So we say he is a creator because we see the greatness in what he has created. Okay. But this time around, we are not going to look at it from this direction. Okay. When we come to human beings, apart from these that Allah has given to us, there is another form we used to study. And we used to learn. And what is that? We have 2 types of knowledge that a human being can also acquire. The first one we call it cognition through knowledge by presence. Okay? Cognition through knowledge by presence. And then we have knowledge by acquisition. Presence, knowledge by presence, and knowledge by acquisition. So when we say, let's start with knowledge by acquisition because it has to do with these ones. Knowledge by acquisitions are knowledge that we acquire. We study them either through intellectual understanding. So we can use intellectual understanding to know who God is. And we can also use experimental understanding. Like as I said, we look at what God has created. Then we know that God is the creator. So we call him, he is Khalik. Even experimental, intellectual understanding also, we use our intellect to know God exists. And we will elaborate more on this. How do we use our intellect to know that God exists? Okay, we know that every effect has to have a cause. Anything that is material, it must have the master that made it. We don't need to see the master for us to know that he made it, or he's not the one that made it. Just by seeing the product itself, it indicates that there is manufacturer of the product. Like if you look at the phone. Phone is a product of a company, isn't it? So by seeing the phone, we don't need to see who are the managers of the company, or we don't need to even know where the company is located. Just by seeing the phone itself, it indicates to us that manufacturer is there. So we know God through this, we call it intellectual understanding. And that is what we say, where you use your intellect, pure logic, to be able to understand that there is God. We'll talk about that into details. Okay? Then we come to devotional understanding. Devotional understanding also, you need to hear from someone, as we mentioned. So Allah sent prophet to come and tell us that Allah exists. So when we devote ourselves to those prophets, we are able to hear what they say and to learn from what they say. That is why I told you last week. When you talk to somebody who doesn't believe in the prophet, or somebody who doesn't believe in the Quran, if you quote the Quran, or you quote the sayings of the prophet, to prove to him that God exists, it is not going to make sense to that person. Why? Because now we are going to use what we call devotional understanding. And he has not devoted himself. In other words, he doesn't learn from what you believe in. He does not accept in what you believe in. And therefore, if you tell him that prophet or Allah said, Allah exists in the Quran, he doesn't believe. But yes, those who believe, they acquire knowledge through devotional understanding, and of course, we spoke about mystical understanding. So all these 4 types of knowledge, they fall under what we call acquired knowledge. Okay, you need to acquire. You have the material, you have the capital. So you use the capital to be able to go to the market and then buy. And the other one, we call it knowledge by presence. Knowledge by presence, we don't acquire them. Knowledge by presence, we don't acquire them. They are knowledge that is within us. So that knowledge also is very crucial. Like for instance, how do you know that you are hungry? You don't think to know you are hungry. If you think, it means you get hungry through intellectual understanding. But nobody, think to know they are hungry. You feel within yourself. So that feeling, which brings you to the realization that you are hungry, we call it presentational knowledge. Okay? Not only hunger. Okay? We know what is, let's say for instance, if somebody is angry, okay, somebody is angry, in himself, he feels that he's angry. And he doesn't need to acquire it. He doesn't need to use any of those 4 to be able to acquire it. So this presentational knowledge is very important. It is very important in such a way that it gives us the understanding of who we are. Okay? It gives us understanding of who exactly we are and how we feel about things. Like for instance, every human being knows themselves. Every human being knows themselves. How do we know ourselves? I want you to pay attention to me and listen to this. How do you know yourself? Nobody think to know themselves. You don't think that I want to think to know who am I. Of course, you can think to know what you do. Are you a good person or you are not a good person? That's what you can think to know. Okay? But when it comes to knowing and feeling your consciousness, you don't need to think about that. How does a person think about his consciousness to know? He is the person, or he is the person that he is. No, it doesn't work out like that. Okay? And who think to know who they are? When you wake up in the morning, you don't say, am I the same person who slept yesterday? And you don't think to say, no, I am the same person who slept yesterday. That knowledge of who you are is always with you. At all times, it is with you. And therefore, it doesn't even escape you even for a second. And how do you get that knowledge? Because the knowledge is presentational. It is in you. It is inbuilt in you. So, this presentational knowledges, they are different from this acquired knowledges that we acquire. But remember, whether it is acquired knowledge or presentational knowledge, it is your capital. It is what you have. So if you are hungry, nobody will come and tell you are hungry. You know you are hungry. Then you make sure that you go and buy something or get food to remove that hunger. Okay? Nobody will come and tell you that, no, you are Komei. No, you know yourself. Yani when you wake up in the morning, you don't think that am I the same person just by you waking up. That sense of who you are, that consciousness, automatically it is awake. Okay. So, the point that we need to take note of is that the way this acquired knowledges can help us to know God, the same way presentational knowledge can help us to know who God is. So we don't only rely on acquired knowledge. No. Presentational knowledge also is part of the capital that we have, the huge capital that we have to engage in the business. And how do we use presentational knowledge? How do we use presentational knowledge? Presentational knowledge can be used in this way that I'm going to mention for us to know God. You remember I told you that human being is built in a very unique way. So there are certain feelings that are in him. One of those feelings, we call it sense of religiosity. And we mentioned this in the past. That feeling of sense of religiosity, every human being has it. And that feeling is part of the presentational knowledge. It doesn't require thinking, neither does it require any reflection. And that is how, a presentational knowledge is. Presentational knowledge does not require thinking, it doesn't require reflection, it doesn't require for us to see, it doesn't require for us to use any of our senses. It doesn't require any, the devotional understanding. No, it doesn't require. Because we are built like that. You are created like that. Okay? So this sense of religiosity that is in you, if you are able to use it well together with this, you can be able to know who God is. How? Like as I mentioned, you have that sense of religiosity. Like I remember the example that I gave that time. I said, if let's say you are driving and something happens while you are speeding, okay, how do you feel? There is some, strange feeling that happens to you at that moment. And everybody knows it. Because you feel it. You don't learn it. Okay? It comes immediately. You feel it. Okay. So that is part of what we call presentational knowledge, because that knowledge is in you. Okay? And remember, presentational knowledge doesn't make mistake. Unlike these knowledges, all this knowledge can make mistake. Intellectually, you can calculate and make mistake. In the same way, experimentally, you can experiment something, and at the end of the day, you will make mistake. The same way, devotionally, you can hear stories from people, and you might end up believing in them, but in reality, what they said to you is not true. Okay? But when it comes to presentational knowledge, it never makes mistakes. No. Like what? It cannot be possible that you feel you are hungry, but you are not hungry. Unless maybe if you are sick. Or do you think it's possible? You feel you are hungry and then you are not hungry. No. Or maybe you feel you are upset, but you are not upset. No. If you are upset, automatically you know that you are upset. The same way, if you are in love, you don't see the love. Being in love is within yourself, because it is what? It is presentational. So the same way, that fear we have whenever we are in danger, it is presentational. So you see, all form of presentational knowledge, all of them, they are 100%. They don't make mistake. So if presentational knowledge discovers something, nobody will doubt to say no. Yes, of course, somebody might not know what you feel, but you yourself, your feeling cannot deceive you. We need to make this clear. If I am hungry, there is no way my feeling of I am hungry deceives me, but I can say to you that I'm hungry while I'm not hungry. Because you cannot feel me. You cannot enter into me to feel who am I. Okay? But myself, there is no way I will be hungry and I don't know that I'm hungry. Immediately I'm hungry, I know. So that is why presentational knowledge doesn't make mistake. It's 100. So anything presentational knowledge knows, it means that it is 100%. Unlike the acquired knowledge, where sometimes we can make mistakes. Sometimes we can think, like mathematics, when you calculate, when mathematical formula is given to you and you calculate, it's possible that at the end of the day you will get the answer wrong, even though you used your intellect. Or maybe sometimes your eyes can deceive you. You can see something in distance. Let's say, for instance, in distance you see a horse, but because your eyes cannot see it clearly, and your eyes will tell your mind that it's not a horse but rather it's a cow, for instance. So in that case, your eyes is not very sharp, and therefore it couldn't be able to tell you exactly what is there. So you see, these are acquired knowledges. We get them, and by getting them sometimes we make mistakes. But when it comes to presentational knowledge, there is no way that presentational knowledge can make mistake. So if presentational knowledge cannot make mistake, it means that the sense that we have when we are in danger, we feel that we need some supernatural power to help us. We feel like we need some extraordinary power to save us. It means that that feeling doesn't lie. That feeling indicates that we have a kind of connection with that supernatural being. I don't know if you understand this. Let me repeat it. You see, when you drive or when you are in danger, that feeling you feel that I need some help. I need something to take me out of this danger. It is a presentational knowledge. And we said presentational knowledge doesn't lie. If presentational knowledge doesn't lie, what it means that feeling indicates that you have that connection with some type of supernatural, sometimes of something extraordinary, that in times of danger you need the help of that particular supernatural being. Okay? So discovering that means that you know that there is supernatural being somewhere, you are looking for him. But here the problem is that the presentational knowledge itself cannot come out to go and look for the supernatural being. So what happened is that the presentational knowledge now will work with acquired knowledge. This knowledge it will work with them. Because remember, as I mentioned to you, these knowledges, even though they can work independently, but they also work together with one another. The intellect can work independently without the senses. But in most cases, they work closely to each other. Like what? If I want to calculate something, the eye, if it is something that has to be written, the eye must see the writing so that the mind will calculate. So you see that the intellect is working with the senses. Okay? If I want to hear something, to think about it, it's the ears that must hear the sound, so that the mind will do the deduction and calculations. So the same way, presentational knowledge and acquired knowledge, they work together. Okay? How do they work together? Now that feeling we have, that indicate that we are religious beings. Now we are looking for that great, existence. We are looking for that, extraordinary, existence. How do we know that extraordinary existence? So sometimes we use intellectual understanding. Let me just give you an example. How do we use intellectual understanding to discover that supernatural? There is something they call it necessary existent in philosophy. Something that its existence must be necessary. And without that necessary existence, nothing will exist. Necessary existence means that every existence came from that existence. And who knows that existence? Who has ever seen that existence? It is impossible for us to be able to see that existence with our naked eye. It's impossible. But logically, intellectually, we know that without that necessary existence, nothing will exist. It's like logically, we don't know our great-great-great-grandparents, but we can't deny that they existed. They existed. Because if they didn't exist, we will not exist. So from that argument, intellect is able to prove that God exists. Okay? So, if intellect is able to prove that God exists, then the sense of religiosity, which is presentational knowledge, will connect with logic or with the intellect to know that, okay, that feeling that I have, that feeling I had when I was in danger, and that superpower that I was looking for, that superpower is the necessary existence. So now the logic has helped us to discover necessary existence. I don't know if it is clear what I'm saying. Because remember, look, what are we talking about here? We are going into the market to buy. And you cannot go into the market if you don't have purchasing power. You will just go and do what we call window shopping. You look at them and then you come back. But you don't want to go and do window shopping. You really want to go and do what? To buy. So you need what? Purchasing power. So what are purchasing power? We said we have presentational purchasing power. And then we have acquired purchasing power. And we said acquired purchasing power are these powers. These four ways of knowing. It's one of our capital, our purchasing power. And the presentational also is one of our purchasing power. And the differences between acquired and presentational is that presentational doesn't make a mistake. No. Even the smallest of mistake, presentational doesn't make. But acquired knowledge there are possibility that acquired knowledge can make mistake. So the only way we can avoid mistakes in acquired knowledge is if we do due diligence so that all possibilities of errors are removed, then it won't make a mistake. But that one also is very difficult. Like for instance, if you have something, let's say 500 kilometers away, and you want to use your eyes to know what exactly it is, how are you going to be able to know? Is it possible? From here, 500 kilometers, you can look at that thing to say, no, I know it is a horse or it's an elephant. It's impossible. So if you really want to know it, from 500 kilometer distance, you cannot know it. So what must you do? You must cut down the distance until when the eye can be able to detect what it is. Then the eye will tell the intellect that no, it is an elephant. In that case, the room for mistake has been removed. Okay? But like as I said, some of those things they are almost impossible to know because they are very difficult. With the eyes, how will you know how Jannah is? With the eyes, how will you know how Nar Jahannam is? With the eyes, how will we know how Day of Qiyamah is going to be? So it means that this experimental knowledge cannot be able to understand exactly things that are in the future, things that are going to happen in the Day of Qiyamah. It cannot know. And therefore, what must happen? There must be way of all these working together. They work together until eventually whatever we want to buy, we will buy the correct thing, something that we really need, so that we can keep it. Okay? So now, presentational knowledge has discovered this supernatural power. But unfortunately, presentational knowledge doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have intellect to be able to see or to think and know that particular thing. So now, what is it going to do? It will come and explore one of the acquired knowledge. So number one, intellect. Intellect can help us, like we say, necessary and possible. So we know that all existent are as a result of necessary existence. So that's why we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala necessary existence. In Arabic we say wajibul wujud. His existence is necessary. And what made his existence to be necessary? You and I will make his existence to be necessary. Because if he is not there, we will not be there. So our existence indicates that he is there. Now that the intellect is able to prove this, then the presentational knowledge will say, yes, that is the one I'm talking about. He is the one I need his help when I was in danger. He is the one that I was calling on when I had a flat tire, when I was driving over 120 kilometers. So now you see that they match. Okay? It's like, let's say for instance, they told you about something, some food, some kind of food that is they say the food is very sweet. Yeah, that food is very nice, it's very sweet. You see, you've already saved what is sweet in your mind. So now you are exploring to get the food. So the day you get the food and you taste the food, if it is sweet, what happened? What you thought and what you tasted now marry each other. Now you prove that yes, no, it's true, this fruit is very sweet. So the same way, presentational knowledge is looking for God. When the intellect does his job, he said, yes, it's true, necessary, existent, he is that God I'm talking about. The same way, experimental also can do a job. How does experimental does the job? If the experimental, let's say physics, chemistry, biology, or let's just use our simple 5 senses. When the eye sees the sun and it sees the greatness of the sun, what does the eye say? It says, no, this thing cannot be made by any ordinary person. Look at the galaxies. How many billions of them we have? Then, now once your eyes see, then your intellect will come in to say, this one cannot be done by ordinary person. Then they tell you that you know the one who did it. He is the one you were looking for when you were in danger. You remember when you were in danger, you thought of you need some superpower. Yes, that superpower is the one who created the sun. That superpower is the one who created the moon. That superpower he created. They said, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And he is the one who can save me. He's the only one that can save me. So you see that now experimental understanding has concurred with presentational knowledge. The same way can be said about the devotional understanding. How? Jesus came and he told us that there is God. Moses came and he told us there is God. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad came, he told us there is God. Ibrahim came, he told us there is God. So all these are devotional knowledge. And these people who told us, we saw their lives. We saw that they were good people, they were not hostile to people, they were kind, they were what. And they are telling us that the God who sent them is the one we have to seek for help whenever we are in need of help. We said, okay, who is that God? Ibrahim told me. He said, that God is the one who created everything. He gave you life. Then the presentational knowledge will say, wow, Ibrahim, you are making sense because I have been looking for it in my presentational sense. Now what you are saying, I can connect. Okay? The same way we talk about mystical. Mystical is revelation. And a prophet revealed to you, he says, Allah said, I must tell you there is Jannah, there is Nar. Said, what is the purpose of Jannah? Jannah is for those who are good people. They will go there. Wow. What you are saying, it makes sense. And what is Nar? Nar is for bad people. They will go there and face the consequences. Wow. What you are saying, it makes sense. So you see that the presentational knowledge then connect with the God, the presentational knowledge is yearning for. Are we together? So we see that our journey to know God does not only ends with this, epistemology, those 4 types of epistemology. They also work with the presentational knowledge. And remember, presentational knowledge does not make mistake. No. You see, there are people, they have the presentational knowledge, but unfortunately people around them deceived them that the God they are looking for is that idol. Okay? The God they are looking for is the idol. So they end up thinking that, oh, that God is this idol. So they connect that presentational knowledge with that idol. But as long as it doesn't make sense, one day they will discover to know that no. That God is not this one. Why? Because once the presentational knowledge is locked up with something outside, always these things will be working to think that, is it true that it's this one or it's not this one? Is it true is that one or it's not that one? To a point where they find out that it's not that one, they are going to leave it and go to the other one. So that is why you see that presentational knowledge becomes so important that it is the essential capital that we have. Essential capital that we have, in which we use it to go to the market to be able to trade and to make sure that we buy good product from multitudes of products that we have, which we call it speculative reality. I remember I spoke about speculations, and in the world, the things that are there, all of them, you have to be very careful to choose from all the speculative reality to get the reality itself. When you get the reality itself, that means you were profitable in your business. But if you don't get the reality itself and you waste your time on other speculative reality, then it means that your business wasn't that successful. So this is where we will end our first lesson. I don't know if there is any question with regards to the things that I've mentioned. You can go ahead and ask. And those online, please, you can ask your question. You can type it for us and we will respond to it, inshallah. But I hope, it's very clear. Today the main thing we spoke about is presentational knowledge and acquired knowledge. And acquired knowledge, we have already spoken about them in the past. Those are the knowledge that we can acquire them, okay? Either through our thinking, or through our senses, or through our devotion, or through mystical way of understanding. These are acquired. And I said what? These 3 knowledges, and 4 knowledges, they are prone to mistakes. You can make mistake. Okay? Like mystical understanding. We don't even have that mystical way of understanding. There are certain unique people that have been given that ability, who have this way. But we don't have. And therefore, either they can get it correctly to misinterpret it to us, or they will lie to say they have it, but they don't have it. That is why you see some people, they say May God called me to tell you something. And maybe because he wants money from you, he will lie to you in the name of God. He wants to use mystical to get something from you, and he lied to you.
There's a question online.
Okay.
Is Allah the only wajibul wujud?
Of course, Allah is the only wajibul wujud. Allah is the only necessary existent. Everything starts with him and ends with him. So we call him, he is the Rabb. Rabb means he is the Lord, meaning that everything gets its sustenance from him. And he is the only wajibul wujud. And everything apart from him, they are mumkinul wujud. We call it possible existent. Everything apart from Allah is possible existent. Now,
Molana, what about the other way? Are they going to be wajibul wujud?
no, they are possible existent. So it can't be that Ahlul Bayt are wajibul wujud. Okay? You see, Ahlul Bayt are like, you want to build a very beautiful house, you know? A very beautiful house. There are key things you need to put in that house so that the house can be beautiful. If you don't put those things, the house cannot be beautiful. So the purpose of those things is to make the house to be the most beautiful house. So Allah created creations, and out of those creations he created human beings, right? And he wanted human being to be the best, to be perfect. So the pillars in the structure of human being to be the best is Ahlul Bayt. But Ahlul Bayt, they are not necessarily existent. That is a big, statement. No, they are nowhere near necessary existent. Is there any question also online?
Same. He's asking, wouldn't the natural factors of this universe be wajibul wujud like the sun?
No, the sun cannot be wajib. Because if you say the sun is wajibul wujud, it means that the sun created itself. Okay? And then sun needs to be where it is. Who created the environment that is suitable for the sun to be where it is? Is the sun created the conditions itself? No. You understand? So sun cannot be necessarily existent because it requires to be where it is and to perform the exact functions that it is performing. And remember, sun is a matter. And any matter requires a space. Who created the space for the sun to occupy that space? Unless if you say or we think that the sun created the space that it occupies and the axis it moves on, it created itself. And that logically from intellectual understanding is impossible. It's clear? Okay. So let's close and then in a few minutes we'll come back for the second lesson, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. الشيطان الرجيم اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We are going to continue with the fiqh lessons. Last week we spoke about najasat, and we enumerated all the najasat, and also we looked at things that makes us to come to the conclusion that something is najasun or it is not najasun. So we mentioned, those ways that will lead a person to know that this is najasun or it is not najasun. So from here what we understand is that everything that Allah has created is tahir until we have a proof, and we have been given those proofs of enumerating all that makes up the najasa. Okay, so now that we know the najasat, what we come up to is that human beings sometimes can be in a state of being clean. He is in a state of not being clean, and therefore he has to clean himself. And one of those things we mentioned, which are mutaharat, or we use it to purify what is najisun, is water. So water is that component that we use for us to make ourselves tahir. Okay, so today we want to limit ourselves to the path of our responsibilities, because remember, tahara is not only limited to salat, okay, or it's only limited to no. You know, anything that is najisun has to be purified. Even a bowl that is najisun has to be washed for it to be tahir. A wall that is najisun has to be washed for it to be tahir. A carpet that is najisun has to be washed. So tahara is not necessarily linked with only human beings. Okay. So today we are going to talk about human being, the status of human being. There are times where a human being can find himself in a state we call he is not clean. And if a human being finds themselves in that state, then it is important they need to clean themselves, to move themselves away from the status of not being clean to the status that they are clean. And we want to limit to salat for now, and inshallah as time goes on, we will talk about other things as well. So today I want us to look deep into the first that is recommended in our salat. Remember, salat is very important. Salat is wajib, as we know. Allah says that salat is wajib for us, so we don't have a choice. So if we don't have a choice, anything that makes salat to be complete becomes wajib also. You know, in fiqh, anything that is wajib, okay, whatever is required to complete the wujub, the necessity of it, also becomes wajib. Okay, so let's look at wudu, ablution. You see, ablution by itself is not wajib. I want you to pay attention and listen to this very carefully. Ablution by itself is not wajib. Like for instance, now you are sitting down. You can't say it's wajib, you must make wudu because you want to sit down. No, it's not wajib. And there's such wudu. And therefore such wudu, they don't constitute something that will make you to do a wrong thing or not. No, because it is just a wudu. But there are wudu that is wajib. The wudu that is wajib is the wudu for some things, like number one, salat. So if wudu for salat is wajib, it's because the salat is wajib, not by the wudu itself. Like as I mentioned, wudu by itself is not wajib. But once we are going to perform salat, that wudu for that salat becomes what? Wajib. Wajib. Okay. And even in any way, in the world of wujub, okay, in the world of necessity, something that is wajib you must do, there are two main things that every Muslim has to understand. We have what we call wajibu kifai and wajibu aini. Wajibu kifai is wajib that is wajib on all Muslims. Okay? But if one or more people among Muslims they do it, then the necessity of it is, lifted over Muslims. Like for instance, if somebody passes away in Cape Town and he's a Muslim, it's not only Muslims in Cape Town that is wajib for them to bury him. No. All Muslims in the world, it's wajib that they must see that the person is buried. Okay? So this kind of wajib, we call it wajib kifai. Wajib that if one or few people take up the challenge, the responsibility now is taken away from the shoulders of all Muslims. You see, sometimes you look at the wisdom of things like this, how Allah connected us. Yani the fight of one is the fight of all. And this fight is not an optional fight, but it is necessary fight. It's wajib. Wajibu kifai. Then we have another wajib, we call it wajibu aini. Wajibu aini is wajib that each and every individual must do it. Nobody can do it for other. No. Like for instance, nobody can perform salat for someone that is still alive. No, it's not possible. As long as the person is alive, even though if the person is sick, even if the person is in coma, okay, nobody can perform salat for him. Why? Because he's still alive. So that salat is necessary for he himself to perform. So such wujub, we call them wajibu aini. Wajibu aini. Okay? So salat is part and parcel of those wajibu aini that everybody must perform salat. Even kuffar, I want you to listen to this carefully. Even kuffar, salat is wajibu on them. Yes. Salat is wajibu on kuffar. Maybe I know somebody will be thinking, how? It's like doing good. Doing good is wajib not only on Muslims, even on kuffar is wajib to do good, isn't it? When a kafir, let's say for instance, a kafir comes into the shop of a Muslim and steals, do they arrest him or they don't arrest him? Why is he arrested? We should say he's kafir, so he doesn't need to be. No. Because it's wajib for a Muslim to be a good person. It's also wajib for non-Muslim to do good things, to be a good person. So salat also on kuffar is wajib. But because they are kuffar, there is a veil that has made their wujub to be veiled. And what is that veil? That veil is they have not yet accepted Islam. So the day a kafir says, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, the veil that veiled salat to be wajib on him automatically is removed. And from that moment, the salat becomes, from that moment, if he doesn't perform salat, he's going to be answerable to it. But prior to that, even though it was wajib, but the veil made him not to be responsible of it. I don't know if it is clear. Like somebody will be doing things which are not good. Let's say somebody is taking people's property, okay? He's taking people's property. And he did that for the last 10 years. And then in these 10 years, he was free. Nobody arrested him. So does that mean that he is exonerated? Does that mean that, because he got away with it, he is free? No. The day the law will get him, he will pay for everything that he has done. And sometimes it happens, somebody commits some criminal activities and he will live until he dies. And the law will never get to him. But it doesn't mean because the law didn't get to him, the law was not working, or maybe the law was invalid. No, the law is valid. He was just by some means, he managed to do all those things, and eventually, he died without him being prosecuted. So salat becomes wajib on every human being. And the only difference is that there are those that have removed the veil, which is they are Muslims, they have recited kalima, and there are those that are yet to recite. Okay, now we are talking about tahara. especially wudu, in terms of how does a person clean himself. Remember, we said everything is tahir until we have a proof that it is not tahir. When it comes to human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed a human being in such a way that there are certain things that He has made them wajib on that human being. And those things, if he is going to do it, there are certain process that he needs to go through them to be able to do them. One of them is salat. Okay. So when we are going to make salat, we make wudu. And because salat, the act of salat is wajib, automatically that wudu becomes wajib. So if wudu is wajib, it means it's very important we need to know how to make wudu. Because if we don't perform wudu properly, then the salat is not going to be valid. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about. Wudu by itself is not wajib, but once it comes, we are going to make wudu for salat, that wudu is strictly has to be performed properly. If we don't perform it properly, then our salat is not going to be correct. Okay. So how do we perform wudu? A person will only perform wudu if he is in the state of not being clean. Okay? So in that case, he will perform wudu. Of course, when it comes to wudu, okay, like as some of our scholars, they put them together. Cleanliness, they bundled two cleanliness together. We have cleanliness for salat, and then we have cleanliness for things like janaba and so on and so forth. But all of these, they are part of cleanliness. Okay. So a human being will find himself in that status. And when he finds him or herself in that status, then he has to clean himself or herself. Like women, they have the same responsibilities when it comes to wudu as men. Okay? But they also have some other responsibilities that when those responsibilities happen to them, they need to go in certain processes to clean themselves. Like women, they have this monthly cycle. Okay? When a woman is in that state, she must go through certain, so we have a haid, and we have something they call it istihara. Inshallah, we'll speak about all this, moving forward. Okay? There is some type of blood that a woman sees, which is not a haidon, which is after 10 days of her menstrual, duration. We have the maximum time of menstruation shouldn't be more than 10 days. So any blood that a woman witnessed from 10 days, we call it, istihara. That also has its own rules. Then we have another blood, they call it nifas. A blood a woman sees after she gives birth. Okay? So this three is unique for women. Men, we are not part of it. But when it comes to this others, all the others, we share with women. Like touching the dead body, like peeing, like, stool, like wet dreams, and all these other things we share with women. Okay. So anytime a man finds himself in one of these things, automatically it becomes necessary that he has to clean him or herself so that a person can be able to perform salat. And it's wajib, because without the removal of that, salat cannot be performed. And if salat is performed in such state, that salat is valueless, and it doesn't have anything. But today I want us to zoom into wudu. You see, sometimes we see wudu to be very simple. We see, what is wudu? I've been performing wudu for the last 10, 15 years. I know how to perform it. Okay. Wudu, as I earlier indicated, constitute a very important component of salat. So if a person is going to perform wudu, remember he must use water, which, remember we said water is part of what we make something that is clean, mutaharat, isn't it? So wudu, water is the first component. And therefore, we need to look at the water and look at the criteria of the water. Which of the categories the water falls in? Is it water that is mixed water? Is it pure water? Is it cold water? Is it less than cold water? Is it stagnant water? Is it rain or running water? All these, they have their rules as we have mentioned, most of them. Okay? So once a person comes to the realization that no, this water is a clean water that can be used for wudu, then now the ground is set for wudu to start. So meaning that even for wudu to be completed, the type of water you are going to use for wudu has to be checked. So if you perform wudu properly, but the water we used is not a clean water, it means our wudu is not correct and our salat also is not going to be correct. Okay, so first of all, we need to check that the water is clean. And once we get to the point where the water is clean and we are going to start, you see, there is this thing that happened in our communities. Even I remember, I think last week or so I was mentioning it. When people make wudu, they commit a sin while they are also making wudu. And this is very sad. Yani, how can you commit a sin while you are making wudu? Right there you are making wudu, you are committing a sin. And how does that happen? There are people, when they get to make wudu, they open the tap like this, and then the water will be running, and they are busy folding their, now they are pulling and whatever for them to make wudu. The water you are wasting, you are committing a sin. Because you are wasting water. And therefore, why do you make wudu to get reward while you also committing a sin? Sometimes, especially in our center, you are sitting there in the masjid, and if somebody comes to make wudu, one of the signs we hear is the water. They waste water. So you are taking some values of what you are supposed to put together. So everybody must be conscious of that. Regardless of whether there is water in abundance or whatever. No, the israf is not good. So now we are going to make wudu. Everything about the water is clean. Number one, we make sure we don't waste water. Number two, or the wajib aspect of wudu is your niyyah, your intention. Remember, I told you earlier on that there are wudu that is not wajib. Okay, wudu that you just want to make and sit and whatever. But whenever you are going to make wudu for salat or something that is wajib, that wudu has to be qurbatan ilallah. You are making the wudu for the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? You want to make wudu because you want to touch Quran. It's wajib, you must be clean to touch Quran. So that wudu becomes what? Qurbatan ilallah. Wajib. Of course, you don't need to mention. You don't need to say, I'm going to perform wudu. No. The intention is, I'm making this wudu to have nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let me just explain this. Why nearness of Allah? You see, all of us, our goal in life is that to be able to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to obtain Allah. Okay? So our act of worship is a way to that obtaining Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your wudu is the path that takes you to obtain Allah. Your salat is the path to take you to obtain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like when you go to high school. They tell you to come in with a specific dress code. Okay? You are not going to school to study dress codes. You have to maybe to shade. No. But it becomes necessary, you have to go with that dress code. Okay? Because probably without that dress code, you are not going to be permitted to sit in class, to study. You are there to study. But now the dress code now becomes what? Become necessary because it will permit you to go and study. So the same way wudu. That is why we say qurbatan ilallah. Qurba means nearness. So that I will be nearer and nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once the niyyah is done, before that the tap has not been opened yet. Or maybe let's say if you have some dirt in your arms and places you are going to wash. Maybe you have some dirt here, there is some ink here, or maybe some what here, or maybe your face or on your head or your feet. You first of all wash that away. You wash it away. And washing that away is not part of wudu. Now that we're going to start wudu, after saying wajib qurbatan ilallah, then you open the tap. You fill your arm with the water and close the tap. When you open and fill your handful, close the tap. Don't let it run and you do like this and you are washing and then you are still wasting. So you are committing a sin at the same time. Okay. So when you put your hand under it and then you fetch the water. Remember, in wudu we have wajib part. Okay. And then we have optional part. There are places that are necessary you have to wash. And there are places that are optional. If you wash, it's mustahab. If you don't wash also, it doesn't invalidate your wudu. What are those ones? The first we do, the one we wash our arms like this. Okay? Of course, if you are washing your arm, the tap can run to wash. Or maybe if you are fetching it from something, a container, then you wash. Okay? That is not wajib. The same way putting water in our mouth to gargle, okay, to throw away is not wajib. Okay. But where does wujub start? Wujub start from the face. Okay, so you see even in Quran when Allah talks about wudu, Allah mentions only the wajib part. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila salat. Whenever you intend to perform salat, faksilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq. Wash your face and your arm until the elbow. Then it says, wamsahu bi ru'usikum wa arjulakum, and wipe your head and your feet. And I'm just mentioning this, something came in about there are some, why do we wash, why do we wipe? Quran says wamsahu bi ru'usikum, and here it says arjulakum. But that is something, inshallah, maybe another time we will discuss. But it's very interesting. Like, you know, today, wudu, some people, they wash their feet, right? And then we wipe our feet. So why is it so? There are those who say there are ahadith from the Prophet that says we must wash. And we said no. The Quran itself says wipe. And there are certain technicalities in terms of how the sentences are arranged. He said, wamsahu bi ru'usi, sikum. Then arjula, the leg says wa arjulakum. It's fatah here, kasra here. So there are certain technicalities with regards to that, where you see some people try to use that to support their argument. But it's very clear. Quran says wipe your head and your feet. If somebody says wipe your head and your feet, are you going to wipe your head and then you wash the feet? It says take this one and that one. What does that mean? Take this one and that one. Take both. You can't say, I take this one and then I push this one. Said, why did you do that? That is what you said. You said, I must take this one and push this one. How did I say that? I said, and. And means both of them, you must take them away. Isn't it? Yes. But now let's come to what we are discussing. So, you are going to start with your face. And where do you start from the face? You start from what we call kisas al-sha'ar, the beginning of the hair. The beginning here doesn't mean the excess hair that comes here. No. Where the hair starts to grow. Okay? Until your chin. Okay? And then the width-wise has to be what we call the ibham, the middle finger and the thumb. Where these two covers is wajib, you must wash. Okay? So when you put your hand on your face, you see that here and there, this part coming down is wajib, you have to wash. And remember, while you are washing, the water must run from top downwards. It cannot go otherwise. So you pour water on your forehead, then your hands will be running, on your face, and to make sure that all parts of the face, which is the wajib one, is between the middle finger and the thumb, water touches all those parts. But it is mustahab to go a little bit extra. Like if the hands ends here, you just go a little bit so that you make sure that you have covered the face entirely. But that is extra. The wajib is this. between this and that. Okay? So you wash until the chin. Okay. That is number one. When you finish, now you go and open the tap and fetch water in your hand to wash your right hand. It is mustahab that when you are going to wash your arm, open the tap, collect the water with the left hand, with the right hand, and put it in the left hand so that you rub. If there is any question also, you can just notify me, then I answer. Okay? So you collect the water and then you wash your arm. Your arm also, the water must come from top to bottom. It cannot be like this. If you do like this and water run downwards, there is a problem with your wudu. Your hand must be downward and then this one must run over the hand. Then after that you do the same thing to the left hand. So you collect water. So when you put water on your hand and you are rubbing, you close it. You don't allow it running and then you do like this and then you are wasting water. So you are committing a sin. So you do the same thing to the left arm. There is a secret a lot of mistakes people make. When they make wudu, when they wash their arms, because in the beginning when they were doing the mustahab, they wash their hands here. Now when they are washing from the elbow or a little bit above, it's mustahab to go a little bit above the elbow so that you make sure that you cover all. When they wash, they only wash, they care until the wrist. Okay, they don't pay too much attention on the hand itself, and that is wrong because the arm is from here until the tips of the fingers. So the one you washed earlier on, that was just mustahab, but this one is which is wajib. So you must wash and make sure that you wash until the tips of the finger and in between your fingers. You need to wash all of it thoroughly, and you do the same thing to your left arm. And when you finish, now you don't collect another water. The same wetness you have, you rub your head. And when you are rubbing your head also, your head must be stationary. Some people, they wash like this while the head is moving. That is wrong. The head has to be stationary and the arm, okay, will run over the head like this. And then the feet also must be stationary. I've seen a lot of people, when they make wudu, while they are still standing, then they will raise their hand like this. They raise their hand and to be rubbing on their feet. And while you see that the feet is moving, that wudu is bad. If you want to rub your feet has to be stationary. And it is the hand that has to run on top of the feet. So the right hand on the right leg, and then the left hand on the left leg. So when you do like that, your wudu is correct. And remember, wudu, you can either do it once or twice. That means if you start doing it, washing your face once, you must do once all of it. And if you start with 2-2, then it must be 2-2 until the end. And also one of the very important points, you don't put a distance in wudu. You wash your face, then you go there, you talk, and then you come back to come and wash your arm. No. It has to be, in order. Start to finish. If you're able to do that, then alhamdulillah, your wudu is correct. So inshallah, this is where we will come to the end of our second lesson. I don't know if there is any question or anything that any of you. And if you have any question, maybe even if it is later, please try to write it so that we can respond to it, inshallah. Is there any question? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.